Thomas Van Horn?
Thomas Van Horn
Okay.
was dispatched by Hull
Okay.
to try to meet with Henry Brush, who was at the River Raisin, to get supplies for Detroit, and that was on the August the 4th. And he ran into Tecumseh and a group of Indians at Brownstown, and so we had the Battle of Brownstown.
Right.
Basically about 25 Indians and a few British and 200 Americans. The Americans were routed and fled back to Detroit. In the battle, 4 days later, another battle occurred. The Americans won, but retreated to Detroit, and of course on the 16th of August, Hull surrendered without defending the fort. Mm-hmm. And of course the problem was he could not be supplied, and the British controlled Lake Erie. So that's an interesting.
So this is Hull over here, right? Well, what is this over here?
Oh, this is simply a roster of a militia unit that was called up during the War of 1812, in May of 1812, prior to the declaration of war, and they were from Miami County, and they were sent to Greenville simply to guard the frontier. Obviously, we declared war on the 18th of June, but people anticipated war ever since really the Battle of Tippecanoe. I mean, it appeared that it was almost inevitable.
Mm-hmm. So what fort is this?
That was Fort Detroit.
Oh, Fort Detroit. Okay.
Which of course surrendered to Isaac Brock. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Once Hull heard, I mean, Hull said to President Madison, if we don't control the lake, all of the Northwest will fall. And that's exactly what happened. The British seized Mackinac without firing a shot because nobody had told the people at Mackinac that the war had been declared. Fort Dearborn, the troops there retreated and were massacred. And of course, Hull was terrified. And Brock simply said, look, I've got all these Indian allies. I have no control over them. If you will surrender, I will gladly guarantee your safety. If you do not, you know, it could be a massacre. And of course, that was the end. Hull knuckled under.
Oh, this is,
That's the River Raisin.
yeah, this same piece is in the River Raisin Museum too.
Yes, that's a great print.
Right. As someone said, there's no palm trees in Michigan, but there's kind of a palm tree.
It looks more like, you're right, it looks more like a palm tree.
Right, and look at, so you got all these these Native Americans, these Indians doing awful things to the,
Yes,
and looking like really not wholesome.
No, it was definitely
Burning and everything.
terrible. Yeah, they were burning the huts with the wounded in them and then dragging people out and tomahawking them. And, yeah, so it was.
Well, kind of sounds like sometimes what some of the military does when they get, you know, their friends get killed, they just get carried away with the
The local
people.
library owns two portraits. This one of William Henry Harrison, which I think is a very good one. There's no artist. This is a copy of it. We had the original in our exhibit, but after 2 months they wanted it back for the Bicentennial. So
A lot of lights on here.
but it's a very nice portrait. I think it really captures his appearance better in some ways than the standard portrait that you see at Grouseland.
Right.
Of course, you had here at Fort Meigs, of course, you know, even though it was a strategic victory, tactically, the defeat of Dudley's troop by the Indians, out of 800 troops, only 150 made it into the fort. And the Indians made the survivors run the gauntlet at Fort Miami, and they were in the process of beginning to butcher some of the American troops when Tecumseh arrived on the scene and put a stop to it. So,
Well, you know, I don't know about you, I can understand it. You've got, it's like you understand some of the hate going on in the world. You get a lot of innocent
Yes,
children and
surely.
women and old people suffer and die and are tortured by Americans, and you have a rage in you that you don't even want to, you don't want them to live to fight you again or go kill people again.
Surely.
This is also, I don't know if you knew this, this is where the Army began at Fort Meigs. This is, we didn't have an Army, and it started right here, and William Henry Harrison started it.
This is a drawing by a local artist, John Hibbler.
Oh, beautiful.
And he did a beautiful job. He approached me, and I sent him information about the fort. He did some detailed research, and this is probably as accurate a depiction as there can be. Fort Stevenson was here. It's the site of the Burchard Library in town now. There was only one cannon in the fort, Old Betsy, which is still there.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen it?
No.
I'll take you there after this. What Croghan did, he had about 200 men, 160 fit for duty, and basically he was opposed by about 800 Indians and about 500 British. The British were busy building the Detroit, their flagship, so they didn't have any heavy artillery, and their bigger ships were blockading Erie, Pennsylvania. The fort was attacked on the 2nd of August, and the British troops, when they attacked, and this is particularly, I think, exciting. This is one of the great items in my collection. It's a letter from Sergeant Joseph Bickley, who went on to serve on the Caledonia in the Battle of Lake Erie, and it is a detailed, wonderful, unpublished account of all of the events immediately preceding the siege and the aftermath of the siege of Fort Stevenson. I mean, it's the kind of thing that a collector, just dreams of finding.
Is this the copy for it here? The
This
text
is the
for it?
text, yes. And it's interesting, Harrison ordered George Croghan to abandon and burn Fort Stevenson. It was not significant. He was 9 miles south at Fort Seneca with a fair number of troops and reinforcements on the way. Croghan said he would not do that and so Harrison sent the 2nd U.S. Light Dragoons under James Vincent Ball up to arrest him, and on the way they had a battle with the Indians 1 mile south of where we are. This is a scene of the attack. This is Colonel Short, who was being killed, and that's his picture there. That's the frontispiece from Howe's Historical Collections of Ohio. So today it's not well known, but at the time it was. And there's the one cannon which the British fell in the ditch. They didn't know it was a ditch there. And Old Betsy, the cannon, was fired twice with all kinds of slugs. And basically the attack ended with a terrible British defeat. The 2nd of September really, to me, marks the turning point of the War of 1812.
The 2nd of September.
2nd of August, I'm sorry. And the reason
2nd of
is
August, okay.
because that's the day that Perry crossed the bar in Erie. It's also the defeat of the British Army and their third invasion of Ohio. This is a very fanciful depiction of the Battle of Lake Erie by Gordon Hope Grant, who was a very famous illustrator. It's sort of in the Brandywine school of Pyle and Wyeth.
This is when you look in there. That's if you look at any of the CamericaTV videos from the water, you can see the ship's cannons firing in the smoke like that. You can see it. You can see that.
Right.
The only thing you can't see any splashes of shrapnel in the water.
No. Isn't that a great picture? I love it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful picture, right?
Really a treasure.
Holes in the sail.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, the Lawrence was basically destroyed.
There are holes everywhere.
And of course, Perry really he really did a very poor job. I mean, he did a great job fighting his ship. He was very courageous. He did a great job, constructing the fleet. But, he did not signal in the battle, did not engage the whole fleet, and almost lost it.
So what do we have here?
This is a chair made from wood from the Niagara, and that comes from the Follett House, which is owned in Sandusky by the Sandusky Library Association. There are a number of chairs. So we have gavels, canes, chairs, picture frames,
Wow.
chunks. Yeah, quite a bit. This is interesting. This is this particularly, if you'll, this is a watercolor of the Battle of Lake Erie by J.C. Cahoon. And Cahoon eventually became the purser on the Constitution and actually designed the funeral car for Perry's funeral when he was reburied in Newport. The interesting thing is the frame is made from wood taken from the Niagara. And that sounds exotic, but think how big the ship was, and so there is a lot of wood around.
Wow.
You can see the bolt holes.
Yeah, the Niagara is one of the larger of
Yes.
the pieces.
And of course, there's the courier knives. The thing about this print here by Cahoon is it's, I think, somewhat realistic. You look at most of the art renderings of the Battle of Lake Erie, and the artist uses license and moves the ships very close together, and it bears no resemblance to the Battle of Lake Erie. None
Yeah, like this
whatsoever.
one, right. But if you look at those airplane shots on CamericaTV, you can see how they were trying to get in the S shape that they were in, and they really weren't that close. They weren't like this.
No, they were quite far apart.
Yeah.
Here is, this is interesting here.
Just a second, I'll get this one here too. (1836), huh?
Basically, a book was published in 1816, The Naval Monument, and those prints appeared in there, all of the different illustrations. And it's also very clear that Cahoon used the top print as the model for his drawing.